The hiss of steam rolled through the boiler room, low and steady, like the breath of something asleep. Deep beneath St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, Malik Grant tightened the final valve, wiped his brow, and checked the gauge, one last time. Stable. Midnight. His shift was finally over. A buzz lit up his phone. Blizzard warning. Avoid unnecessary travel. He exhaled through a small laugh. Unnecessary travel. Whoever wrote that didn't have a 6-year-old waiting at home. He opened FaceTime. 2 rings later, Zara appeared, her hair puffed in sleepy curls, clutching her stuffed bear, Maple. "Daddy, you still at work?" "Almost done, baby. Pipes are fixed. Heat's back on." "The snow's loud," she murmured. Then, "Let it sing. Means the city's getting clean," he said, smiling. "Are you coming home soon?" "Promise," he said softly. "Keep Mr. Bear safe till I get there." "Okay, love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart." He kissed his fingers and touched the screen. When the call ended, the room felt too still, the air heavy with metal and heat. He stripped off his coveralls, pulled on his winter jacket, and climbed the service stairs toward the parking lot. The city outside had turned into a snow globe. Streetlights glowed in circles of amber haze. Malik brushed a thick layer of snow off his old F-150, started the engine, and waited for the heater to groan awake. The smell of oil and dust filled the cab. He checked the dashboard. Clock 12:07 a.m. Highway 7 was nearly empty. The 401 was closed after a pile-up, so he took the long road east, tires whispering over packed snow. Wind howled against the windshield. Wipers beat their slow rhythm. On the dash, Zara's drawing, 2 stick figures under a crooked yellow sun, fluttered with each gust of air from the vents. Malik's shoulders eased. For a moment, there was only the hum of the road, the pulse of the heater, and the memory of his daughter's sleepy voice. He told himself he'd be home in 40 minutes, maybe less if the plows kept up. Then he saw it. At first it looked like a shadow, something hunched near the guardrail, half buried in snow. He frowned, slowing down. Too small to be debris, too still to be alive. The headlights caught it again, a human shape, sitting in the snow, arms wrapped tight around its knees. Malik braked hard. The truck fishtailed slightly before stopping. The hazard lights began to blink, amber flashes cutting through the storm. He hesitated only a second before grabbing the flashlight from the glove box and stepping into the wind. The cold hit him like a fist, sharp enough to sting his lungs. He trudged through knee-deep snow, shouting over the storm, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. Only the hiss of wind and the hiss of tires, somewhere far behind. The beam of his flashlight found her, a woman, young, maybe mid-20s. Her coat was soaked through, her hair frozen against her face. And then he saw it. Plastic, zip ties biting into her wrist and ankle, one looped around the metal rail. "Jesus," he breathed. He knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her head turned slightly, eyes wide but unfocused. She tried to speak, but her lips barely moved. "Okay," he murmured. "Hang on. I'm gonna get that off." He ran back to the truck, rummaged behind the seat for the bolt cutter he kept for work emergencies, and hurried back. His fingers burned from the cold as he pressed the jaws around the tie and squeezed. It snapped clean. The woman flinched, then gasped as blood began to move back into her hand. "There we go," he said quietly. "You're free." He shrugged off his parka and wrapped it around her shoulders. She trembled violently, eyes darting toward the highway as if she expected headlights to appear any second. "Let's get you warm," Malik said. Steady, but gentle. She shook her head weakly. "Don't call them." "Who?" he asked. Her gaze slid away. "Please, just go." Malik's breath fogged in the light. He thought of Zara, asleep at home, safe, warm, and of Naomi, his late wife, the night the ambulance took too long to arrive. He'd learned then that sometimes the system showed up too late to save anyone. "All right," he said softly. "No cops, not yet, but you can't stay here." He lifted her carefully. She was light as snow itself, her legs barely holding. Together they stumbled through the drifts to the truck. He opened the passenger door, helped her inside. She sank into the seat, teeth chattering, clutching his coat like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Malik climbed in, slammed the door shut, and cranked the heater higher. The vents wheezed out waves of lukewarm air, the cab filled with the smell of wet fabric and iron. For a long moment, they just breathed, two strangers in a metal box, while the world outside howled. "You got a name?" Malik asked, glancing sideways. She shook her head. "Not tonight." "That's fine," he said quietly. "You can tell me when you're ready." He shifted into gear and eased back onto the road. Snow swept across the hood in white ribbons. Her eyes stayed fixed on the dark beyond the windshield. Malik drove slow, headlights cutting tunnels through the storm. After a while, her voice came again, almost a whisper. "Thank you." He nodded but didn't answer. Gratitude wasn't what he needed. It was clarity, and he knew that wouldn't come tonight. In the mirror, the highway behind them was already disappearing beneath fresh snow, their tracks gone within seconds. Ahead, the city lights of Scarborough glowed faintly, blurred by distance and storm. Malik kept his hands tight on the wheel. He didn't know who she was, or what nightmare had left her chained to a guardrail in the middle of a Canadian blizzard. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He couldn't drive away and forget. Inside the cab, the heater finally caught, up, washing warmth over their frozen faces. The woman's eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion overtaking fear. Malik glanced at her, then back at the road. "Almost home?" he whispered to no one in particular. Outside, the snow fell thicker, sealing the world in white silence. If you've ever slowed down when everyone else kept driving, if you've ever believed that compassion still matters on nights like this, remember that sometimes the smallest act of courage can change everything. The apartment was small, the kind that had been lived in long enough to remember laughter and loss at once. When Malik opened the door, a gust of warm air wrapped around them, faintly sweet, faintly tired. The hallway light flickered overhead as he helped the woman step inside. A candle sat cold on the coffee table, its label faded, cinnamon hearth. It hadn't been lit in weeks, yet the scent still clung to the walls, mixed with detergent and the memory of a home that tried its best to keep standing. On one side of the room, photos lined the wall, Naomi's face in every frame. Her smile was steady, her eyes the kind that saw both the joke and the storm behind it. One photo showed her holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. Another showed her and Malik on a picnic, their hands tangled in the grass. Next to the photos were Zara's drawings. Stick figures, rainbows, clumsy hearts, and a big red house labeled Home. A few pages of homework were stuck to the fridge with alphabet magnets. The place felt small, but alive, every inch speaking of effort. One man trying to raise a child and still keep the ghost of his wife close enough to remember, but far enough not to drown. Malik turned on the lamp, its soft yellow light stretching across the worn couch and the rug that had survived spilled soup and coloring markers. "You can take the bathroom down the hall," he said. "There's a towel on the rack and some clothes in the drawer. They might be a little big." The woman hesitated, still half wrapped in his coat. Her fingers were white at the knuckles. Malik caught the faint tremor that ran through her shoulders. "It's warm water," he added. "Not perfect, but better than freezing." She nodded once, clutching the coat closer, and disappeared into the hallway. The bathroom door shut with a soft click. For a long moment, Malik just stood there. The hum of the old radiator filled the silence. The apartment looked the same as it had that morning, yet it felt different now, like the air itself was holding its breath. He rubbed his eyes, dropped his keys on the counter, and leaned against the sink. From behind the door came the faint sound of running water, pipes groaning with effort. The sound was strangely comforting. A small voice startled him. "Daddy?" Zara stood in the doorway of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Curls frizzed into a halo. "You're home." "Yeah, baby, sorry, I woke you." She blinked at him, then glanced toward the bathroom. "Someone's here?" Just a friend who needed a place to warm up, he said carefully. Zara frowned in that serious way children do. She can wear Mommy's hoodie, the purple one. Malik looked at her. For a second, the suggestion hit him like a memory. Naomi laughing in that same hoodie on a rainy morning, coffee mug in hand. You sure? Zara nodded solemn. It's soft. It helps when you're sad. He smiled, weary but grateful. Okay, sweetheart. Back to bed now. She turned without another word, her bare feet padding softly against the floor. When the shower stopped, Malik left the folded hoodie outside the door. It was old, faded, still carrying the faint scent of vanilla lotion. He didn't say anything, just set it down and walked away. Minutes later, the bathroom door opened. Steam rolled into the hallway. The woman stepped out wearing the hoodie and a pair of loose sweatpants. Her hair was damp, skin flushed from heat, eyes still wary. She froze when she saw Zara standing there, clutching her stuffed bear, Maple. You can hold him, Zara said simply, lifting the bear up. He helps when you're scared. The woman blinked, unsure what to do, then reached out slowly. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice cracked around the edges like something unused for too long. Zara gave a satisfied nod and toddled back to her room. The door clicked shut behind her. Malik stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stirring a pot of soup. The smell of garlic and chicken filled the air, wrapping the apartment in warmth that felt older than grief. He ladled the soup into a chipped bowl and set it on the table. Eat, he said quietly. It's not fancy, but it's hot. The woman sat, her hand still trembling as she lifted the spoon. She took a small sip, then another, her breathing slowing as the heat settled into her chest. What's your name? Malik asked, leaning against the counter. She hesitated, spoon halfway to her lips. Elena, she said finally, the syllables foreign in her own mouth. It's been a long time since anyone called me that. He nodded. Good name. Her gaze flicked up at him. It means light. He smiled faintly. Guess we could both use some. They didn't speak after that. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Wind brushed against the window, snow tapping the glass. It wasn't comfort, not yet, but it was something close. When she finished, Malik cleared the bowl and rinsed it under the tap. He didn't press her for answers, though questions burned in his throat. Who tied her? Who she was running from? What kind of world did that to someone? But he'd learned, after Naomi's illness, that sometimes silence was the kindest thing you could offer. He handed her a folded blanket. You can take the couch. It's clean. I don't want to take your space, she murmured. You're not. I don't sleep much anyway. She nodded, eyes lowering. Thank you for not asking. Malik looked at her, the lines in his face softening. You don't owe me anything tonight. Just rest. She sat down on the couch, wrapping the blanket around her. The silver emergency foil peeked from underneath like the memory of the road they'd left behind. Malik crossed to the front door. Old habits took over. He checked the lock twice, then reached for the handheld radio sitting on the shelf, a relic from his years, volunteering in search and rescue up north. He set it on the table near the door and switched it to channel 1. The faint static filled the room, a soft pulse of sound that made the silence less sharp. He turned off the overhead light, leaving only the lamp by the couch glowing low and warm. Elena was already drifting toward sleep, clutching Maple close, the bear's stitched eye glinting in the dimness. Malik sat in the armchair across from her. The streetlight outside painted faint, amber stripes across the floor. He leaned back, arms folded, listening, to the slow breathing from the couch, the distant hum of the city, the radio's steady hiss. For the first time in months, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt alive, fragile, as if hope itself had found a place to rest. Outside, snow kept falling, silent and endless. Inside, beneath the smell of soup and cinnamon, Malik Grant let his eyes close for just a moment, unsure if he was keeping watch over a stranger or beginning to witness the start of something he didn't yet understand. Snowmelt dripped from the hospital awning, tapping against the hood of Malik's jacket as he crossed the staff parking lot the next night. His second consecutive graveyard shift had finally ended. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky above Toronto carried that gray glow that hinted morning was near. The air smelled of salt, coffee, and cold metal. He was halfway to his truck when a voice cut through the quiet. "Mr. Grant?" Malik turned. A man leaned casually against a black sedan a few spaces away, the kind of car too clean for a hospital lot at dawn. He wore a wool coat over a dark suit. No gloves, no hat, just standing there as if the cold didn't touch him. His smile was polite, practiced, the kind that could belong to a lawyer or someone pretending to be one. "Yeah?" Malik's voice was cautious. "Riley Sutter," the man said, stepping forward and offering a gloved hand. Malik didn't take it. "Private investigator. I'm hoping you can help me out." "Don't think so," Malik said, reaching for his keys. "It's about a woman," Sutter continued easily, unfazed. "Young, mid-20s, brown hair, thin, last seen near Highway 7 2 nights ago." Malik froze. Sutter's tone was too calm, too knowing. The man tilted his head, studying him. "You were working late that night, weren't you? I pulled your schedule. St. Michael's, maintenance shift ending at midnight. You live in Regent Park, right? Single father, hard worker." Malik's jaw tightened. "You've done your homework," Sutter smiled. "It's my job, and my job, Mr. Grant, is to bring her back." Malik squinted. "Back where?" "To her family," Sutter said smoothly, as if the word family were enough to explain everything. "They're worried sick. She's fragile. She needs proper care." Malik's gut twisted. "Care," he repeated flatly. Sutter shrugged, hands in his coat pockets. "People get lost. They panic. Sometimes they run from what's best for them." He looked past Malik toward the hospital, his voice turning gentle, almost sympathetic. "You seem like a good man. You help people. So if you know where she is, if she came to you, I'd advise returning her before things get complicated." Malik stared at him. "You're wasting your time." "Maybe," Sutter said, "but maybe not." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Plain white, no name, no logo, just a phone number printed in black. He held it out. "Call when you're ready to tell the truth." Malik didn't take the card. "You finished?" Sutter smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "For now, drive safe, Mr. Grant. Weather's still rough out there." He slid back into his car. The sedan pulled out of the lot, taillights vanishing into the pale dawn. Malik stood there for a moment, heart hammering against his ribs. He finally looked down. The card was tucked into the wiper blade of his truck. He pulled it free, turned it over. Just that single line of numbers, clean and cold. He crushed it in his hand. By the time Malik reached Regent Park, the city was waking up. Snowplows scraped the curbs, buses hissed to life. He parked the truck and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. His breath came faster than it should have. When he reached his floor, something small but sharp stopped him. The hallway camera above the elevator, the one he'd fixed himself last month, was tilted. Not broken, tilted. A screwdriver's twist. He froze. His pulse went heavy. That camera fed directly to the landlord's server, and if someone had accessed it, they'd know which unit belonged to him. He unlocked the door quietly. Inside, the apartment was still. Zara's drawings fluttered slightly near the vent. The soft hum of the heater filled the space. Elena was awake, sitting on the couch with the blanket wrapped around her. Her hair was pulled back now, eyes clearer but still ringed in shadow. She looked up when he entered, reading his face instantly. "What happened?" she asked. Malik didn't answer right away. He crossed to the window, peering through the blinds. The street below was calm, too calm. A dark sedan was parked across the lot, engine idling, exhaust curling faintly in the cold air. "Someone came to see me," he said finally. "At work." Elena straightened. "Who?" "Said his name's Riley Sutter. Claims he's a private investigator." Her knuckles whitened around the blanket. "What did he say?" "That he's looking for you." that your family wants you back. He turned to face her. Sound familiar? She didn't speak, but the answer was in her eyes, the way the color drained from her face, the way her chest rose and fell faster. They found me, she whispered. Malik ran a hand over his jaw. He knew where I work, knew about my kid. That's not just tracking, that's digging. I told you, she said, voice trembling. They don't stop. He's not just some investigator. He works for them, for Hale. The man you ran from, she nodded. He calls it a church. It's not. They control everything. Money, police, people's lives. If he sent Sutter, it means they've already bought access to records, cameras, maybe even the landlord here. Malik's eyes flicked to the corner camera near his door. The faint red light blinked. He crossed the room and yanked the plug from the wall. Not anymore. Elena stood. You can't stay here. He'll come back. He met her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, Pack what you need. Zara stirred, sleepy-eyed, as Malik knelt by her bed. We're going on a little trip, sweetheart, he whispered. You remember camping at Bruce Peninsula? It's like that, just for a few days. She nodded, half dreaming. Can I bring Maple? Of course, he said, smiling faintly. By the time the bag was packed, clothes, soup cans, the portable radio, Zara's bear, the sky outside had turned a steel gray. Snow began to fall again, slow and silent. Elena stood by the window, hood pulled tight, staring down at the empty street. Do you think he's still out there? Malik zipped the duffel. Doesn't matter. We're not waiting to find out. He checked the radio batteries, slid it into his jacket, and looked around the apartment one last time. The photos, the candle, the ghost of the life he had built. Everything felt smaller now, fragile under the weight of something closing in. He turned off the lights, opened the door, and ushered Elena and Zara into the hall. Downstairs, his breath clouded in the stairwell air. The night swallowed the sound of their steps. When they reached the truck, Malik opened the passenger door for Elena, then helped Zara climb into the back seat. He started the engine, the familiar groan of metal and fire. In the mirror, he saw the apartment lights flicker once, then fade. As the truck rolled onto the road, he kept his eyes on the rearview mirror. Behind them, at the far end of the block, a pair of headlights turned on and followed, distant but steady. Malik's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't tell Elena. Didn't have to. She already knew. Tonight, the chase had begun. Snow streaked past in thin white ribbons, bending under the beam of Malik's headlights. The highway was nearly empty, just the rumble of tires on frozen asphalt and the pulse of wind beating against the windshield. Zara slept in the back, bundled in her coat and Maple under her arm. Elena sat stiff in the passenger seat, staring through the glass, her reflection ghosting against the snow. Malik's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The black SUV that had followed them from Regent Park was gone, or maybe just far enough back to feel invisible. He'd killed the headlights for a few kilometers, then turned off onto Don Valley Parkway, hoping the maze of ramps would hide their trail. He kept his voice low. You said before, that place, New Dawn. What is it exactly? Elena hesitated. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. Her hands tightened in her lap. It's a compound, out near Simcoe County. They call it a church, but it's more like a fortress. Hale built it 20 years ago. Everyone inside lives by his rules. No phones, no outsiders, no questions. He decides who marries who. He says it's God's plan, but it's control. Malik glanced at her. And he's the one who had you tied up? Her voice cracked. Yes. I tried to leave once. He called it betrayal. Said I needed cleansing. They kept me locked under the chapel. No light. Just his voice through the speaker, preaching about obedience. The words sat between them like frost. Malik didn't ask more. He pressed the gas, merging north toward Highway 404, then onto 400. The city fell away behind them. An hour later, the orange lights of civilization dimmed. Ahead, lay only black sky and the endless rhythm of snow against glass. Where are we going? Elena asked finally. West, Malik said. I know a place near Schaumburg, just off Highway 9. Small town, quiet. We'll stop for coffee. Let the storm cover our trail. She nodded, silent. They drove until the faint neon glow of a diner sign appeared through the snowfall. Darla's 24-hour cafe. Malik pulled in, tires crunching over frozen gravel. The parking lot was empty, except for a snowplow idling by the side. Inside, the warmth hit like a wave. Grease, coffee, and country music humming low from an old radio. A waitress in her 60s looked up from behind the counter. Rough night for driving, she said. Yeah, Malik replied. Just passing through. She nodded without asking for details, pointing to a booth by the window. Sit. I'll bring something hot, says Zara stirred awake, yawning. Malik brushed her curls gently. We're getting cocoa, kiddo. Elena sat beside the window, shoulders hunched. The waitress came back with 2 mugs of coffee and a small cup of cocoa crowned with melting marshmallows. On the house, she said softly, then walked away. Elena watched the steam rise, eyes distant. You shouldn't have stopped. Even soldiers rest, Malik said. She smiled faintly. You were military? Once, he said. Learned 2 things. Keep moving and never leave someone behind. The diner's neon lights flickered, painting their reflections red and blue on the window pane. Malik's eyes caught movement outside, just a snow truck turning down the main road. Still, his pulse didn't slow. Elena spoke again, her voice quieter. You know what Hale told us the day I turned 17? He said obedience is freedom, that if we surrender, we'll be made whole. My parents believed him. They gave me away like a promise. Zara blinked sleepily, her small hand finding Elena's on the table. That's not fair, the girl murmured. Elena's eyes watered. No, sweetheart, it wasn't. Malik looked down, jaw hard. And the police? They pray with him, she said simply. New Dawn funds their families, their schools. He owns half the town. You can't report a man who signs your paychecks. Malik's breath came out slow. Then we don't report him. We outrun him. They left a few bills under the coffee cups and stepped back into the storm. The air sliced through their coats. Malik checked the lot. No lights, no movement. He helped Zara into the truck, waited until both doors shut, then pulled back onto the highway. The road wound west toward the darkness of the country. A sign flashed by. Schaumburg, 5 kilometers. Elena broke the silence first. If they find me again, don't stop for me. Take her and go. Malik didn't answer at first. Then, that's not happening. Please, she whispered. You have a daughter. I'm not worth... Don't, he cut in. You already paid enough for somebody else's sins. I'm not adding mine. For a moment, the only sound was the wipers scraping ice from the windshield. When they reached the edge of town, Malik turned onto a rural road, following a line of trees that swayed under the weight of snow. He parked under a cluster of pines, engine idling low. He looked at her. From now on, we move smart. No phones, no devices. Anything that pings, gone. Elena nodded. I understand. He dug into the glove box, pulled out 2 prepaid SIM cards still in plastic. We'll use these if we have to contact anyone. 1 message each, no location tags. And if we get separated... He held up his hand, twisting his wrist slightly, palm down. That signal means danger. Find me. Don't shout. Don't run. Find me. She studied the motion, then mimicked it. Like this? Good, he said. He turned to check on Zara. The child was asleep again, head tilted against the window, Maple in her arms. For a heartbeat, the world was still. Then Malik killed the engine. We'll rest here till dawn. Then we keep north. Elena looked out at the forest, black silhouettes against the falling snow. Do you think he's still chasing us? Malik's eyes stayed on the mirror. Far down the road, a faint pair of headlights blinked once, then vanished. Yes, he said quietly. But we'll be ready. He rested a hand on the radio beside him. feeling its cold metal weight. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, a lonely hollow sound that carried both warning and promise. Somewhere beyond the pines, dawn was coming. But before they reached it, they'd have to earn it, mile by mile, heartbeat by heartbeat, until trust itself became their only map. By the time dawn broke, the storm had thinned to a quiet dusting of snow, pale light bleeding through the trees. The truck crept along a narrow service road that wound into the dense wilderness of Algonquin Park. Pines rose on either side like watchmen, their branches sagging under ice. The radio on Malik's dash hissed with static. No signal this deep. That was good. Silence meant safety. They reached a clearing at last, a small cabin, low and sturdy, half buried under snowdrifts. Smoke curled from the metal chimney, faint but alive. Malik parked beside a stack of frozen firewood and killed the engine. "This place looks empty," Elenez whispered. "It is," Malik said. "Belonged to Gabe Ross, old army buddy. He works supply routes up north, spends more time on the road than here. Told me once if I ever needed quiet, the key's under the stump." He crouched by the porch, brushed away a crust of snow, and found the tin box with the key inside. The door creaked open to a single room. Wood walls, a cast-iron stove, 2 narrow beds, a radio from another century, and shelves lined with canned beans and fishing gear. The air smelled of pine, dust, and the faint ghost of tobacco. Zara stepped inside first, her boots crunching on the wooden floor. "It's small," she said softly, "but it feels safe." Malik managed a tired smile. "That's all we need right now." He stoked the stove with kindling, coaxing a small flame to life. The warmth spread slow but steady. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless, muffling the world. Elena sat near the window, staring into the white blur beyond the glass. "It's so quiet," she murmured. "That's the point," Malik said. "No cell towers, no power grid, no neighbors. If they want to find us, they'll have to walk." For the first time since leaving the city, Elena exhaled without trembling. Zara climbed onto one of the bunks, curling up with Maple. Within minutes, she was asleep again. Malik watched the fire catch, orange light licking across the iron stove. The flicker painted the cabin in soft gold, like a heartbeat returning after too long in the dark. By afternoon, Malik was outside splitting logs, each strike of the axe echoing across the frozen clearing. The motion steadied him. Focus, rhythm, release. The smell of fresh-cut pine mixed with the crisp air, sharp and clean. Elena sat on the porch step, her blanket draped around her shoulders. The lines of exhaustion on her face had softened, though her eyes were still far away. For a long time, she watched him work in silence. Then slowly, the words began to come. Not forced, but trembling loose, like thawing ice. "They told me I belonged to God," she said, "but what they meant was that I belonged to Hale." Malik paused mid-swing, letting the axe rest against the stump. "They said a woman's body was a vessel, that it didn't belong to her, only to her faith. He'd preach about devotion while deciding who we were allowed to love, what we could say, how we could breathe." Her hands twisted in the blanket. "And when I tried to ask questions, they said doubt was sin. They made me confess to things I never did, until I started believing I really was broken." Malik leaned on the axe handle. "You're not broken," he said quietly. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. "You don't know what he made me do." "I don't have to," he replied. "You're here. That's enough." The wind sighed through the trees. Snow drifted down from the roof in small avalanches. For a moment, she simply breathed, as though learning how again. That evening, Malik checked the perimeter. He'd installed a motion alarm made from old SAR parts, a shortwave sensor tuned to frequencies only his radio could catch. The static was steady, clean, no interference. Inside, Elena was teaching Zara how to stack firewood. The child laughed when one log toppled, scattering bark across the floor. For the first time, the sound didn't echo like fear. It sounded like life. Malik smiled faintly. Then something tugged at his attention. A faint, irregular buzz from the radio. Not interference. A ping. He froze. Elena, he said softly. Keep Zara here. She frowned. What's wrong? He moved to the window, sweeping the scanner across the room. The sound sharpened when he turned toward the bunk, toward Maple, lying on Zara's blanket. Malik's chest tightened. He picked up the bear gently. Zara, sweetheart. When did you last get this toy? The girl blinked. At the park. That man gave it to me. He said it was a thank you for being brave when I found Miss Elena. Malik's blood went cold. He turned the bear over carefully, fingers tracing the seams. Near the stitched paw, he felt a hard lump beneath the fabric. A tracking chip, small, metallic, and still warm from the signal pulse. Elena gasped, backing away. No, that's impossible. Zara looked between them, eyes wide, frightened. Did I do something bad? Malik crouched to meet her gaze. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. His voice was calm, steady, the same tone he used to talk down emergencies. Someone hid something inside your bear, that's all. But Daddy's going to fix it, okay? She nodded, trembling. Elena covered her mouth, horror flickering across her face. They used her, she whispered. They used a child. Malik ripped the seam open, pulling out the chip no bigger than a thumbnail. A faint red light blinked once, then died when he crushed it in his palm. He stood. Jacket on, he said to Elena. We're burning this thing now. Outside, night had fallen again. The world was silver and still, the forest frozen under the moonlight. Malik dug a shallow pit in the snow, dropped the tracker inside, and splashed it with lighter fluid from the toolkit. The chip hissed, plastic curling and bubbling until it melted into a black smear. Elena stood beside him, clutching the blanket tighter around her. Do you think they already know we're here? Maybe, Malik said, but it won't matter. He stared at the last ember sinking into the snow, a tiny wound, closing over. From here on out, they'd have to walk to find us. He turned back toward the cabin. Behind the frosted window, the light of the stove flickered, gold, fragile, alive. Zara's silhouette danced across the wall, holding Maple's torn fabric close, as if to protect what was left of it. Malik stood there for a long moment, the axe still in his hand, the night pressing close around them. He wasn't sure what kind of war they'd stepped into, but for now, they had a fire, a roof, and each other. And for a man who'd spent years just surviving, that already felt like a promise worth keeping. The wind had calmed by morning, leaving the forest still and brittle beneath a pale sun. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low, just a slow red pulse under the ash. Malik stirred it back to life while Elena sat at the table, a small metal tin in her hands. Her eyes were fixed on it, her face caught between fear and resolve. I wasn't completely honest with you, she said. Malik looked up from the stove. About what? Elena opened the tin. Inside was a USB drive, wrapped in wax paper, tape shut along the edges. It's not just my story. There are others, girls younger than me. And this, she tapped the tin, has proof. Copies of Hale's ledger, the church's donations, cash transfers through fake charities. I took it before I ran. Malik straightened. You risked your life for that. She nodded. I thought if I could get out, someone might finally believe us. But it's been weeks, and I didn't know who to trust. He crouched beside her. Then we find someone who's not bought or scared, someone who'll actually do their job. Her hands shook. You really think such people still exist? He managed a half smile. I know one who might. By noon, Malik had the shortwave radio tuned to a restricted frequency, a logistics channel used by his old army contact, Gabe Ross. It crackled through the static until a woman's voice came faint but clear. North Supply, this is Morin. He froze. Sergeant Aisha Morin? Depends who's asking. This is Malik Grant. I served with Gabe in Kandahar. He told me if I ever needed something serious, off-grid, I could reach you. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that carried weight. Copy that. You safe right now? Mostly, Malik said. But we've got evidence tied to a religious group in Simcoe County. People trafficked, laundered money, police compromised. One of the victims is here. Static filled the line again, then a steady voice. You're not calling a helpline, Grant. You're talking to RCMP's Special Crimes. I can't open a case off a ghost signal. I've got names, records, proof, and a kid involved. You want to see it, you'll have to meet us in person. Another pause. Where? Huntsville OPP detachment, Malik said. Low traffic, back office if possible. Fine, Aisha said. Tomorrow night, 21 at Oregon hours, no phones. Park 2 blocks away and come through the side lot. And Grant, yeah? If you're lying, don't bother showing up. The radio clicked dead. Malik exhaled, long and slow. Elena watched him from the doorway. Tension etched into every line of her body. Who is she? Someone who doesn't scare easy, he said. And right now, that's all we've got. The following night, the roads glistened like black glass under the half moon. Malik's old truck hummed north toward Huntsville, its tires crunching over salt-streaked asphalt. Snowbanks lined the ditches, glittering under the streetlights. Zara slept in the back again, her head on a pillow wedged between coats. Malik reached over to check Elena's seatbelt. She hadn't said a word since they left Algonquin. When they reached town, he parked 2 blocks away from the Ontario Provincial Police Detachment, just as Aisha instructed. The building sat low and square, its glass doors glowing faintly blue beneath the security lights. They entered through a side gate, the metal clicking softly behind them. Inside, the hall smelled of disinfectant and coffee. A single officer passed them without comment, pointing down the corridor toward an interview room. A woman waited there, mid-30s, hair in a tight bun, uniform neat but unpolished. Sergeant Aisha Morin. Her gaze was sharp but not unkind. Grant, she said, offering her hand. You made it. Barely, Malik replied. This is Elena. Aisha nodded once, gesturing for them to sit. She didn't turn on the recorder, didn't open a notepad, just folded her arms on the table and leaned forward. Start when you're ready. Elena took a breath, steadying her trembling hands. My name is Elena Dawes. I was part of a group called New Dawn Fellowship, led by a man named Pastor Nathan Hale. It's registered as a religious organization in New Hope Valley. But it's not a church. It's a front. Aisha said nothing, only nodded for her to continue. They recruit women, mostly from poor families, sometimes runaways. Promise salvation, community, a new start. But once inside, there's no leaving. They take IDs, control finances, and arrange marriages to men who pay to sponsor them. Elena swallowed. I was supposed to be one of those marriages. I tried to escape twice. The second time, they chained me to a tree as punishment. That's where Malik found me. Aisha's expression hardened. You said you had documents? Elena slid the USB across the table. Copies of financial ledgers, names of donors, lists of missing members, and a diary from another girl, Lydia Jensen. She didn't make it out. The sergeant took the drive carefully, her jaw tightening. You understand this is federal once verified. We're talking human trafficking, organized abuse, fraud under charity law. I understand, Elena said softly. I just want it to stop. For a long moment, the only sound was the buzz of the fluorescent light overhead. Aisha stood, pacing slowly. She looked like someone weighing a decision too big for the room. Finally, she spoke. This isn't something I can file tonight. I'll need a judge to authorize a warrant and a task force big enough to hit them all at once. If half of what's on this drive is real, Hale's got people in the system. Malik frowned. How long will it take? Days, Aisha said. Maybe weeks. And until I get that clearance, this stays off book. No records, no leaks. She turned to Elena. If anyone finds out you came here, you're as good as gone. Elena's shoulders sagged. So we wait? You stay hidden, Aisha corrected. And you let me do my job. Once this is official, I'll make sure it doesn't disappear in paperwork. But until then, no phones, no credit cards, No contact. Understood? Malik nodded. We can handle that. Aisha's expression softened, just slightly. You did the right thing bringing this forward, Grant, both of you. But from here on out, you're ghosts. Stay quiet. I'll find you when it's time. She reached out, shook Malik's hand once, firm, then turned to Elena. And when I do, bring every detail you remember, names, faces, prayers, numbers. If we're going to break this, we'll do it by the book, and we'll make sure it sticks. As they left, Malik glanced back down the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed like distant thunder. Somewhere behind those walls, truth was beginning to move, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Outside, snow began to fall again, fine and quiet, erasing their footprints as they walked toward the truck. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time, it felt like a path leading somewhere. Not just away, but toward justice. The fluorescent lights inside the Huntsville detachment buzzed faintly, a constant electric hum under the tension that hung in the air. Sergeant Aisha Morin sat at her desk long after Malik and Elena had gone, combing through the encrypted contents of the USB drive. Each file made her jaw tighten, scanned ledgers, coded donations, names of officers cross-referenced with Hale's charitable partners. She was still reading when the power cut. The screen blinked. Once, then went black. A second later, the backup generator failed too. Total darkness. Then came the sound, beep, 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 the high-pitched alarm of a triggered fire sensor. Red emergency lights strobed through the corridor. Officers shouted down the hall. The building shook with hurried footsteps. Aisha rose slowly, her instincts razor-sharp. She pulled the radio to her mouth. Dispatch, this is Morin. I'm at Huntsville Detachment. Full blackout and fire alarm. Confirm maintenance? Only static. Her stomach sank. No way this is random, she muttered. Down the corridor, the security cameras flickered, screens fuzzing into snow. Someone was jamming the signal. God damn it, she breathed. We've got a leak. She reached for her sidearm and moved fast toward the interview wing, toward where Malik, Elena, and Zara had been waiting in the observation room. Malik had sensed it before the lights even went out. The faint, metallic tang of smoke, the shift in air pressure. He'd done enough SAR operations to recognize danger before it made noise. The hallway outside the room went red as the alarm screamed. He pulled Zara close, voice low, but steady. Stay behind me. Elena's eyes were wide. What's happening? Someone tripped the fire system, Malik said. But that's not smoke. It's cover. He eased the door open, scanning the corridor. Two shadows moved at the far end, tall, purposeful, both wearing black masks and tactical jackets. They weren't first responders. Malik's training kicked in like muscle memory. He shoved Elena and Zara back inside. Lock the inner door. The men were already advancing, silent but coordinated, one checking corners, the other carrying what looked like a crowbar or short baton. Malik grabbed the nearest thing with weight, a metal fire extinguisher mounted by the door. He yanked it free, thumbed off the safety clip. The first man turned the corner, weapon raised. Malik didn't hesitate. He discharged a cloud of white powder straight into the attacker's face. The man staggered, coughing, blinded. Malik swung the canister low, knocking his legs out from under him. The second man lunged from behind, fast, but Malik pivoted, using the extinguisher's base like a shield. The blow glanced off his shoulder. The corridor filled with haze and panic lights. Malik drove forward, blocking the path to the stairwell, the one leading down to the underground garage. You're not getting past, he growled. The masked man recovered, charging again. Malik ducked, slammed his shoulder into the man's ribs, and the two hit the floor hard. Years of field drills returned in flashes. Pressure, momentum, used the terrain. He twisted, pinned the man's arm, and struck once. The mask cracked open, revealing blood and confusion. Then came Aisha's voice from behind. Grant! He turned. She stood framed in the flickering red light, weapon drawn. Garage is compromised, she shouted. We've got to move. Now! Elena and Zara were at her side, both terrified, but upright. You take them, Malik said, breath ragged. I'll hold this line. No, Elena gasped. You can't. He cut her off, eyes steady. We've been running since Toronto. I'm done running. Aisha met his gaze, the kind of look soldiers give when they recognize someone who understands. Then she nodded once. Down the service tunnel, she ordered Elena. Keep your head low. Follow the lights till you reach the secondary exit. Elena grabbed Zara's hand. The girl clutched Maple, her eyes huge. Daddy? Go, Malik said softly. I'll be right behind you. Aisha herded them through the maintenance door, flashlight sweeping the narrow passage. The steel slammed shut behind them. Malik turned back just as another shadow appeared, the third attacker. Bigger, faster, armed with a pistol this time. Malik dove behind a file cabinet as a shot cracked through the hall. The bullet shattered a wall light, showering sparks. He grabbed the fallen extinguisher and hurled it down the corridor. It hit the man square in the chest. As he stumbled, Malik surged forward, tackling him into the concrete wall. The gun clattered away. The fight was close, brutal, desperate. Malik caught a punch to the jaw, answered with an elbow to the throat. The man collapsed, gasping. Malik yanked the mask off. Another unfamiliar face, but the eyes were cold, professional. Sirens wailed outside, the real alarms this time. Aisha's voice cracked through the hall radio. Back up en route. RCMP units inbound. Malik wiped the sweat from his brow, chest heaving. Copy that, he rasped. 5 minutes later, the main doors burst open. Uniformed officers in tactical gear stormed the hallway, securing each corridor. Aisha reappeared with Elena and Zara, pale but safe. 2 suspects were cuffed on the floor. The third lay unconscious beside the stairwell. One of the officers lifted a burner phone from the man's pocket. Ma'am, you need to see this. Aisha took the phone, scrolling through a string of encrypted messages. Her expression darkened. The last text was short, precise. Sutter. Clean up Huntsville. Retrieve Dawes alive if possible. Hale wants her quiet by sunrise. Aisha exhaled sharply. Sutter. Of course it's him. Malik met her eyes. So it's not just corruption, it's a hunt. Not anymore, Aisha said. She turned to the officers. Secure the suspects. Send that phone to cyber forensics and get me a full trace on this number. We move now. No leaks. She faced Malik again. You held them off long enough. You just bought us time to finish this right. He looked past her, down the corridor still flickering with red light. The smell of burnt wiring thick in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Malik said quietly, They came for us. Inside a police station, there's nowhere they won't go. Aisha nodded grimly. Then we go further. Outside, the snow had started again, thick, relentless, falling over the flashing blue lights of the patrol cars. For all the chaos inside, the night looked peaceful, almost calm. But Malik knew better. This wasn't the end of their flight. It was the beginning of the fight. The next morning, the storm had given way to a cold, hard sunlight that glittered on the ice like glass. Inside the Huntsville RCMP field office, the atmosphere felt nothing like peace. A makeshift war room had taken over the conference space. Walls covered in printouts, maps, and strings of red thread connecting property deeds, names, and shell corporations. 3 agencies worked shoulder to shoulder: RCMP, Ontario Provincial Police, and analysts from the Canada Revenue Agency's Financial Crimes Division. The smell of burnt coffee and dry marker ink filled the air. At the center, Aisha stood before a whiteboard crowded with notes. Here's what we know, she said, voice clipped but steady. New Dawn Fellowship operates across 3 counties: New Hope Valley, Simcoe, and Parry Sound. All donations funnel through 3 front charities: Sunrise Ministries, Hale Housing Trust, and an education fund registered to Hale's wife. Together, they've moved over $2 million in the past 18 months. A CRA investigator added, and they own at least 6 rural properties, 4 of them listed under shell names, the same ones showing up on the USB. Aisha circled one of the names with a red pen. R. Sutter Holdings Limited. Our friend Riley has been more than just muscle, she said grimly. He's laundering Hale's money through development contracts. An OPP commander folded his arms. So we're looking at organized trafficking, money laundering, and corruption across multiple jurisdictions. This isn't local anymore. No, Aisha said. It's federal. She turned to Malik, who sat at the edge of the table, shoulders tense. And it starts with keeping our witnesses alive long enough to testify. That afternoon, Aisha met with Malik privately in her office. The blinds were drawn, the hum of traffic faint through the frosted window. We're moving Elena and the girl to a safe house in Barrie, she said. It's run by the Federal Witness Protection Program. Secure location, medical staff on site, no digital trace. She'll stay there until we're ready to go public. Malik shook his head immediately. I'm going with them. Aisha frowned. That's not protocol. You're not a registered witness or family member. You'll compromise the location. She's not just a witness, Malik said, his voice tight. She's the reason my daughter's alive. I pulled her out of a snowbank with chains around her leg. I'm not leaving her alone again. Aisha sighed. You're already on their radar. Malik, if you move with her, you'll bring heat to that site. Then I'll be the shield, he said simply. You know how these people operate. They don't stop because of paperwork. They send someone else. I've seen the look in Sutter's eyes. He's not done. For a moment, Aisha just looked at him. The stubborn calm in his face, the quiet exhaustion in his eyes. Then she rubbed her temples. Fine, but off the record. You don't exist there. You don't contact me. You don't leave. You don't call anyone. Understand? Malik nodded once. Deal. Aisha handed him a plain envelope. Inside were new IDs, prepaid phones, and directions written by hand. Leave before sundown. You'll be met by a counselor and an RCMP liaison. They'll brief Elena for testimony prep. Malik pocketed the envelope. Thank you. Don't thank me, Aisha said. Just keep them breathing. The safe house in Barrie looked nothing like the word suggested. No high fences, no guards with rifles, just a 2-story bungalow at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac. Curtains drawn, mailbox empty, lights warm, but dim. On the inside, it smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and wood polish. A counselor named Renee greeted them at the door, calm and reassuring in a knitted sweater and jeans. Welcome home, for now, she said with a small smile. Elena managed a faint nod. Her hand still trembled, though less than before. Zara clung to Malik's jacket, curious eyes scanning the unfamiliar space. Over the next few days, life began to fall into rhythm. Renee worked with Elena every morning, helping her prepare for the statement she would eventually give under oath. Don't relive it, Renee said gently one afternoon. You tell it like a map, not a wound. Facts first, feelings after. That way, the story belongs to you, not to what they did. Elena nodded slowly, learning to pace her breathing. Her voice grew steadier each day. Zara, meanwhile, found her own form of therapy. She spent hours with crayons and paper at the kitchen table, drawing little houses surrounded by trees. On the third day, she brought one to Malik, a cabin under a yellow window, snow falling around it. This is our place, right? She said. The one where we found Miss Elena. Malik smiled, throat tight. Yeah, baby, that's the one. On the corner of the drawing, Zara had written, The house with the yellow light, safe. Malik pinned it on the fridge. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist, but the calm didn't last. 3 nights later, Aisha's call came through a secure line, voice low and strained. Grant, we've got a problem. Malik's heart clenched. What kind? Sutter. He stood up fast. You caught him? No, Aisha said. We lost him. The transfer convoy to Sudbury was hit by a decoy call. Fake route, fake backup. By the time we realized, the van was empty. He's gone. Malik swore under his breath. You think he'll come after Elena? I think he'll clean house, Aisha said flatly. Hale's network is burning. Anyone who can talk, anyone with proof, is now a target. That includes her. Malik looked toward the living room, where Zara slept curled on the couch beside Elena. The glow from the table lamp painted them both in soft gold. His voice dropped to a whisper. Then we don't wait for them to come. We get ready. Aisha exhaled through the line. I'm sending a mobile unit to patrol the area, but off record. Trust no one. If you see anything, you call me directly, not dispatch. Understood, Malik said. When the call ended, he stood in the doorway, watching the quiet room. Elena's slow breathing, Zara's tiny hand clutching Maple's paw. The picture on the fridge fluttered slightly from the draft, the yellow window glowing under the lamplight. Malik reached out, straightened the paper, and whispered to himself, "They won't touch this light. Not while I'm still standing." The wind off Georgian Bay carried a low, icy howl as the convoy moved through the pre-dawn fog. Snow hissed under the tires of RCMP vehicles. Lights dimmed. Engines muffled. It was 4:37 a.m., and Operation Dawnfall was in motion. At the head of the column, a snowplow cleared the final stretch of frozen rural road leading toward New Dawn's main compound, a sprawling farm on the edge of Simcoe County, ringed by high fences and floodlights that cut pale beams through the mist. Beyond the barns and the chapel, Hale's empire slept, unaware the world was coming for it. Over the radio, Aisha's voice was clear and precise. All units hold perimeter. No lights until breach order. Inside the lead truck, Malik sat suited in borrowed tactical gear, unmarked vest, radio earpiece, a patch of cold sweat at the base of his neck. He wasn't supposed to be there, but Aisha had made it happen. Special authorization, she'd said. We might need someone who knows how to find the forgotten. Now, the distant wail of a bullhorn broke the quiet. RCMP! This property is under federal warrant. All occupants remain where you are. The sound rolled through the fog like thunder. Floodlights snapped on, illuminating the chapel cross and the long barn behind it. Shouts rose from within the buildings, confusion, panic. "Move!" Aisha's voice cut through the radio. The first wave of officers breached the gates. The snowplow pushed aside the last barrier as tactical teams fanned out. Rifles trained. Dogs barked. Boots pounded the frozen ground. Smoke grenades hissed blue plumes across the yard. Malik followed close behind Aisha, heart pounding. He'd seen chaos before, but not like this, not righteous chaos. From the far end of the property came the whine of an engine. A black SUV, fishtailing toward the tree line. "Hale's trying to bolt," someone shouted. "Cut him off! South perimeter," Aisha ordered. "Grant, with me. We've got the barn." They sprinted toward the main structure, where two men in New Dawn coats were dragging a locked trunk toward the back door. Malik and Aisha leveled their flashlights. "Hands where we can see them." The men froze. One dropped the trunk and ran. The other reached for something. Too slow. Aisha's partner tackled him to the ground. Malik swung the beam over the trunk, saw the chain wrapped around it, and the faint, muffled sound of crying from inside. "God," he breathed, yanking at the lock. Aisha's bolt cutter snapped the chain in two. The lid lifted, and out stumbled three women, pale, trembling, half-blinded by the light. Behind them, a small boy of about 7 clung to the wall, eyes huge with terror. "We've got survivors," Aisha said into her mic. "Repeat, multiple survivors." Paramedics rushed in. Malik dropped to one knee beside the boy, lowering his voice. "You're safe now, buddy. You hear me? You're safe." The child blinked, then whispered, "He said God would punish us." Malik met Aisha's eyes. "Not today." Meanwhile, on the other side of the compound, Hale was running. The pastor's white robes flapped as he bolted down a service corridor beneath the chapel, breath coming hard and uneven. The tunnel, built decades ago as a storage passage, led to an underground garage. He clutched a small case tight to his chest, the last of his ledgers and cash. Behind him, a voice echoed through the metal corridor. "Stop right there, Hale. RCMP." But he didn't stop. He reached a side hatch, shoving it open, only to find Riley Sutter waiting. "They're everywhere," Sutter hissed. "We need to go." Hale's eyes flared with desperation. "You had one job, to keep her quiet." Sutter grabbed his arm. "And I will. But we have to move. A spotlight blazed through the hatch. Hands up! Sutter shoved Hale toward the light, drawing fire away as he ducked into the shadows. Hale stumbled into the open, blinded. Officers surrounded him within seconds, pinning him to the ground. Pastor Nathan Hale! Aisha's voice rang out as she emerged from the stairwell, breath steady, weapon lowered. You're under arrest for human trafficking, assault, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Hale glared up, face flushed, voice trembling with indignation. You don't understand. I was saving them. Tell it to the judge, she said flatly. Cameras from local news crews had already begun rolling, their lenses catching the image. Hale in cuffs, kneeling in the snow as dawn broke behind him. The cross from the chapel loomed in the background, its light flickering like an omen. By sunrise, the compound was secured. Officers cataloged evidence, ledgers, black notebooks, a hidden safe stuffed with cash and unregistered IDs. Drones hovered overhead as forensic teams marked footprints and tire tracks. 3 women and 1 boy were taken to a waiting ambulance. Malik rode with them, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. The child's eyes followed the horizon wide and hollow. You did good, Aisha said, quietly, stepping up beside the vehicle. Feels like we're just starting, Malik replied. She nodded. We are. But this time, we're not alone. Later that afternoon, word came through the comms. Sutter's down. The radio crackled again. Repeat. Riley Sutter in custody. Arrested off Route 26. Motel near Collingwood. Suspect surrendered without incident. Aisha exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. Where's the evidence? Found a burner phone and a memory card in the trunk, came the reply. Looks like direct orders from Hale, all time-stamped. She turned to Malik, a weary smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Full circle. He nodded, watching the convoy of police trucks pulling away from the new Dawn compound. Engines humming, sirens silent out of respect. In the distance, snow was still falling, soft and quiet, covering the ground where the cross once cast its shadow. For the first time in months, Malik felt something he hadn't dared to name. Not victory, not closure, but the fragile, steady rhythm of peace earned. Snow still clung to the courthouse steps that morning in Barrie, glinting under a pale March sun. Reporters clustered behind metal barriers, breath fogging in the cold, cameras poised. Inside, the air was taut with anticipation. The first day of The Crown, versus Nathan Hale. Elena sat at the witness table, hands folded neatly in her lap. Across from her, Hale looked almost serene in his gray suit, the faint smirk of a man who'd spent years convincing others he was untouchable. His lawyer, sleek, sharp, and well-paid, prowled the courtroom like a hawk circling prey. Miss Dawes, he began, his voice smooth as glass. You claim to have been detained by my client. Yet there's no formal record of your membership in New Dawn, no documentation, no photographs, no... Elena met his gaze evenly. That's how control works, she said quietly. Nothing was written unless Hale approved it. No names, no paper trail. He told us that erasing proof was holy, that if the world couldn't see us, the world couldn't tempt us. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The lawyer adjusted his tie. You also allege physical restraint? Yes. She turned her hands palm up. Faint scars glimmered under the light. Zip ties, not rope. Easier to hide. Convenient, he said. Elena didn't flinch. Not for me. Aisha, seated behind the Crown Prosecutor's desk, rose next. Her voice cut clean through the room. Your Honor, the Crown submits Exhibits F through L, financial ledgers, electronic transfers, and corroborating testimonies from 3 additional victims recovered from the compound. The judge, a woman in her 60s with iron gray hair, nodded. Admitted. On the screens beside her, images of documents flashed, fake charities, cash routes, shell companies linking directly to Hale's accounts. The illusion of sanctity peeled away. leaving only numbers and signatures. By the time Aisha sat back down, the silence in the courtroom was thick, not with doubt, but with reckoning. 2 weeks later, the verdict came down. The gavel fell once, sharp as thunder. The court finds the defendant, Nathan Hale, guilty on all counts, including human trafficking, unlawful confinement, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The defense lawyer immediately stood. "We intend to appeal, Your Honor." The judge nodded, unsurprised. "That is your right. However, given the severity of the crimes and risk of witness intimidation, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending appeal." Hale's jaw tightened, that mask of spiritual calm cracking for the first time. Reporters outside captured the moment he was led away. The same man who once commanded sermons and silence, now bound in steel cuffs, head bowed under the flash of cameras. The following week, the Crown announced additional indictments. 6 new Dawn elders charged with conspiracy and aiding in financial crimes. Their mugshots ran across every major network. What had once been called a faith community was now labeled what it had always been, a system of coercion and profit. For Aisha, the case was far from over, but it was a beginning. Summer came slow to Ontario that year, hesitant after a long winter. At the edge of Barrie's north side, a new community park was being rebuilt beside the women's shelter. Swings, garden boxes, bright murals painted by volunteers. Malik stood on a ladder, tightening the final bolt on a wooden beam. His hands were calloused, his shoulders sunburned, but his expression was calm. Aisha watched from the sidewalk, sipping coffee. "You could have taken a vacation, you know." He smiled faintly. "This is one." The shelter director, a tall Métis woman with a booming laugh, came over to thank them both. "You two gave us a lot more than you think," she said. When the ribbon cutting began, Zara held the scissors. She looked up at her father, eyes gleaming. "Ready? Do it, baby." She snipped the ribbon clean. Cheers, breaking out as children rushed toward the new playground. The swing creaked. Laughter echoed. For a moment, Malik simply stood still, soaking it in, the sound of freedom remade in small, human joy. Aisha clapped him on the shoulder. "You ever think about joining the force again?" He chuckled. "No, I'm better with hammers than handcuffs now." "Maybe," she said, "but the world still needs both." He looked at her thoughtful. "So does faith." Weeks later, Elena stood in the quiet corner of a women's center in downtown Barrie, sunlight streaming through tall windows. On the bulletin board behind her hung a flyer, Peer Support Circle, Mondays and Thursdays. She straightened the stack of notebooks on the table, her name tag slightly crooked. Elena Dawes, peer counselor. Across from her, a young woman sat trembling, fingers picking at a frayed sleeve. "They said I'd never be normal again," the woman whispered. Elena smiled gently. "Then maybe normal isn't what you need to be. Maybe you just start with breathing again." The woman hesitated, then nodded. When the session ended, Elena stepped outside, the late summer wind brushing through her hair. Across the street, she saw Malik and Zara waiting in the truck, waving. Zara leaned out the window, grinning. "Ko Elena, hurry! We got ice cream before it melts." Elena laughed, locking the door behind her. As she crossed the street, the bell from St. Mary's Cathedral rang faintly in the distance, slow, steady, like the echo of something once broken being set right again. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like someone who had escaped. She felt like someone who had begun. Spring came to Ontario like an exhale after a long-held breath. The snow had melted into soft rivers along the ditches of Highway 7. The pavement washed clean of salt and winter grit. The air smelled of thawing pine and wet earth. Birds cut slow arcs above the tree line, their cries faint but certain, a season starting over. Malik parked the old F-150 by the shoulder, in almost the same spot where the storm had found him months ago. The truck's engine clicked softly as it cooled, echoing into the quiet. Elena stepped out first, wrapping her jacket tighter against the lingering chill. Zara followed, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked on the drive up, yellow and purple against the gray. For a moment, none of them spoke. They just stood there, looking at the place that had once been a scene of fear, the ditch now softened by moss, the fence line free of snow, the tree trunk unscarred except for a faint, circular groove near its base. "This is it?" Elena asked, voice low. Malik nodded. "Yeah, right here." He opened the truck bed and pulled out a narrow wooden post, its surface sanded smooth, the letters carved deep and deliberate. He'd made it himself in the workshop behind the shelter. The same hands that once repaired broken boilers, now carving a memorial for someone who refused to break. He planted the post beside the tree, pressing it firm into the thawed soil. The words caught the light when he stepped back. No one belongs in chains. Not of the body, not of the soul. The breeze shifted, and Zara knelt down to lay her wildflowers at the base. "For the others," she said softly. Elena crouched beside her, fingertips brushing the engraved letters. The grain of the wood felt alive, like it could still breathe. "They'll see it when they drive by," she whispered, "and maybe they'll slow down long enough to think." Malik gave a small, quiet smile. "That's all we can ask." The three of them sat on the tailgate for a while, letting the road hum with its own rhythm. Trucks passed occasionally, tires hissing over wet asphalt. Life moved, as it always did. Elena looked out at the horizon. "Do you ever think about the man you were before that night?" she asked. Malik chuckled, though the sound carried something heavier beneath. "The guy who worked night shifts, didn't talk to anyone, just kept his head down?" "Yeah," she said. "That one." He leaned back, eyes half closed against the sun. That man thought survival was enough. He thought silence kept him safe. But he didn't know who he was, not really. Elena studied him for a moment, then nodded. "And now?" "Now," Malik said, glancing toward Zara, who was humming to herself, arranging stones around the flowers. "I think maybe safety's not the same as peace. Peace needs noise, laughter, truth, work that means something, the kind you fight to keep." Elena smiled. "You sound like Aisha." He laughed softly. "Don't tell her that." They sat in companionable quiet. The wind moved through the trees, like a long sigh. The world wasn't fixed, not yet, but it was healing, one small, stubborn act at a time. Zara climbed back into the truck, tucking Maple the bear under her arm. "Can we get pancakes on the way home?" Malik grinned. "Only if you promise not to fall asleep halfway through them." "I make no promises," she said, already yawning. Elena closed the passenger door, her reflection ghosting in the window. As Malik started the engine, she looked once more at the roadside memorial, the carved words standing straight in the sun, the flowers trembling gently in the wind. "You think it'll last?" she asked. Malik shifted the truck into gear. "Wood fades, paint peels, but some things stick longer than we think." The engine rumbled to life, steady and familiar. Gravel crunched under the tires as the truck pulled back onto the highway. From a distance, the camera might have caught the scene like a painting. A pickup easing down the open road, a child's laughter drifting faintly from the back seat, two adults sitting forward, not in flight, not in fear, but in motion. As the vehicle disappeared around the bend, the memorial post remained, solitary against the green, sunlight gleaming off the carved words. Somewhere far off, the church bell in Peterborough began to ring. This time, it wasn't a warning or an echo of old control. It was simply what it was, the sound of an ordinary town beginning its morning. And on that stretch of Highway 7, where fear had once frozen the world still, the road looked endless again.